Elowen crouched behind a crumbling wall, her heart pounding in her chest, as the eerie silence of the abandoned city pressed down on her. The once bustling metropolis was now a graveyard, its skyscrapers standing like tombstones against the darkening sky. The air was thick with the scent of decay, a constant reminder of the undead that roamed the streets. Elowen's eyes darted around, searching for any sign of movement, any hint that the horde had found her hiding spot. She clutched the worn leather journal close to her chest, its pages filled with notes and sketches detailing the outbreak. This journal was her lifeline, a record of her desperate search for answers. The undead were not mindless creatures. There was something more sinister at play. Her research had led her to this forsaken city, where rumors spoke of a unique zombie with an intellect and sorrow unlike any other. This creature, she believed, held the key to understanding the plague that had devastated humanity. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared, Elowen knew she had to move. Night was the domain of the undead, and remaining in one place too long was a death sentence. She took a deep breath and sprinted across the street, her footsteps echoing in the empty silence. Every shadow seemed to shift and waver, her nerves on edge with the fear of being discovered. She ducked into an alleyway, her back pressed against the cold, damp brick, trying to steady her breathing. In the distance, a low moan cut through the silence, sending a chill down Elowen's spine. She peeked around the corner and saw a lone figure shuffling through the debris. Its movements were slow, almost hesitant, unlike the typical ravenous frenzy of the undead. This could be the one she was looking for. Her heart raced with a mix of fear and hope. She had to get closer, to observe this creature and understand its nature. Elowen slipped out of the alley, keeping to the shadows as she followed the zombie. The creature led her to an old, decrepit library, its grand facade now covered in ivy and decay. Elowen hesitated at the entrance, the heavy wooden doors ajar as if inviting her in. She steeled herself and stepped inside, the musty scent of old books and rot filling her senses. The interior was dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon through broken windows. She spotted the zombie at the far end of the room, its back turned to her as it gazed at a row of dusty tomes. Elowen watched in silent awe as the zombie's hand trembled, reaching out towards the books with an almost human-like hesitation. She couldn't help but wonder what memories or instincts drove this creature. Was it recalling a time before the apocalypse? Or was it guided by some lingering fragment of its former self? The creature's sorrowful demeanor contrasted starkly with the savage hunger she had come to expect from the undead. Stepping carefully, Elowen approached the zombie, her heart pounding in her ears. The floorboards creaked under her weight, and the creature slowly turned to face her. Its eyes, though clouded and lifeless, seemed to hold a depth of emotion. It let out a low, mournful groan that echoed through the empty library, sending shivers down her spine. She held her breath, waiting for the inevitable attack, but it never came. Instead, the zombie simply stared at her, its expression almost pleading. Summoning her courage, Elowen whispered softly, "Do you understand me?" The zombie's head tilted slightly, as if trying to comprehend her words. It raised a decaying hand and pointed towards the journal clutched in her arms. Elowen glanced down, realizing that this creature might recognize the importance of her research. She cautiously extended the journal towards the zombie, who gingerly took it with surprising gentleness. The zombie opened the journal and began flipping through the pages, its movements deliberate and slow. Elowen watched in amazement as it paused on certain entries, as if absorbing the information. This was no ordinary zombie. It possessed an intelligence that defied explanation. She took a step closer, her curiosity overriding her fear. "Can you help me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The zombie's eyes met hers, and for a moment she felt a connection, as if they were two lost souls seeking answers in a world gone mad. The zombie carefully handed the journal back to Elowen and gestured towards a nearby desk. It then moved to a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards, revealing a cache of ancient, weathered scrolls. Elowen's eyes widened in astonishment. These scrolls could contain the knowledge she needed to understand the outbreak, and possibly find a way to end it. The zombie's actions were methodical, almost ritualistic, as it laid out the scrolls before her, each one a potential key to unlocking the mysteries of the undead plague. Elowen's fingers trembled with excitement as she carefully unrolled one of the ancient scrolls. The parchment was fragile, its surface covered in strange symbols and diagrams that seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly light. She glanced at the zombie, who watched her with an intensity that suggested it understood the significance of these scrolls. "What is this?" she murmured, more to herself than to the creature beside her. The symbols were unlike anything she had seen before, a blend of ancient runes and intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story. As she deciphered the first few lines, a chill ran down her spine. The scrolls spoke of a great calamity that befell an ancient civilization, a plague that turned the living into undead abominations. The descriptions were eerily similar to the current outbreak, hinting that history might be repeating itself. Elowen continued to read, her eyes widening with each revelation. The scrolls detailed the existence of a powerful artifact, a crystalline orb imbued with dark magic. This orb, according to the texts, was the source of the plague, and whoever controlled it had the power to both spread and cure the infection. She glanced at the zombie, realizing that it might have been a guardian of this knowledge, protecting it through the ages. The undead creature pointed to a specific passage, its bony finger tracing the lines of ancient text. Elowen leaned in closer, her breath catching as she read the words. The orb was hidden in a place of great darkness, guarded by creatures of immense power. To retrieve it, one would need courage, strength, and the willingness to confront unimaginable horrors. Elowen felt a surge of determination. This was her chance to end the nightmare that had consumed the world. She looked into the zombie's eyes, seeing a glimmer of understanding and hope. "Will you help me find it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The zombie nodded slowly, a mournful groan escaping its lips. Elowen felt a strange sense of camaraderie with the creature. They were both survivors in a world that had fallen apart. Together, they would embark on a perilous journey to find the orb and put an end to the plague. Elowen and the zombie set out from the library, moving through the desolate streets with a sense of purpose. The moon cast an eerie glow over the ruins, illuminating their path as they navigated through the wreckage of the once great city. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional distant groan of the undead. Elowen kept a wary eye on their surroundings, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. Their journey led them to the outskirts of the city, where the landscape became more treacherous. Overgrown vegetation and the remnants of old buildings created a maze-like terrain. The zombie moved with a strange familiarity, guiding Elowen through the twisted paths as if it knew the way by heart. She marveled at its ability to navigate the terrain, wondering what memories or instincts drove its actions. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, they encountered more undead, but the zombie's presence seemed to deter the others from attacking. It was as if they recognized it as one of their own, or perhaps they sensed the same sorrowful intellect that Elowen had seen. This uneasy truce allowed them to pass through relatively unscathed, though Elowen remained on high alert. Their destination soon came into view, an ancient, decrepit fortress, half buried in the earth. Its walls were covered in moss and ivy, and the air around it felt heavy with dark magic. Elowen's heart raced as she approached the massive stone gate, which stood ajar as if waiting for her. She glanced at the zombie, who nodded solemnly, urging her forward. This was the place described in the scrolls, the resting place of the crystalline orb. Inside the fortress, the atmosphere was thick with decay and foreboding. Elowen could feel the presence of powerful magic, an almost tangible force that seemed to press against her. The zombie led her through a series of dark, winding corridors, each step echoing ominously through the silence. Finally, they reached a grand chamber at the heart of the fortress. In the center of the room, atop a pedestal, rested the crystalline orb, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. Elowen approached the pedestal with caution, her eyes locked on the crystalline orb that pulsed with a malevolent light. The air around it seemed to vibrate with dark energy, and she could feel the weight of its power pressing down on her. The zombie stood by her side, its presence a strange comfort amidst the overwhelming sense of dread. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and touched the orb. A surge of energy shot through her, filling her mind with visions of the past and the origins of the plague. In her mind's eye, Elowen saw the ancient civilization that had created the orb, their experiments with dark magic, and the catastrophic consequences that followed. The orb was meant to be a source of limitless power, but it had become a curse, turning the populace into undead monstrosities. The visions shifted, showing her the ritual needed to destroy the orb and end the plague once and for all. It required immense sacrifice and strength, but it was the only way to save humanity. Elowen withdrew her hand. Her resolve hardened. She explained the ritual to the zombie, who listened intently, its sorrowful eyes reflecting understanding. Together, they prepared the chamber for the ritual, arranging the scrolls and symbols in the precise manner described in the visions. As they worked, the fortress seemed to come alive with dark energy, the very walls vibrating with anticipation. With everything in place, Elowen stood at the center of the chamber, the orb in her hands. The zombie took its position opposite her, ready to assist in the ritual. Elowen began to chant the incantation, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. The orb's light intensified, filling the room with a blinding glow. She could feel the energy building, a maelstrom of power that threatened to consume them both. In the final moments of the ritual, Elowen felt a connection with the zombie, a shared understanding of the sacrifice they were making. As the incantation reached its climax, the orb shattered, releasing a wave of energy that swept through the fortress. The walls trembled, and the dark magic dissipated, leaving behind a sense of calm and stillness. The zombie collapsed, its form crumbling to dust. Elowen knelt beside it, tears streaming down her face, knowing that their sacrifice had saved the world. The nightmare was over, and humanity had a chance to rebuild.